How do you start talking about the beginning of modern comedy albums? Not easy. I'm Jason Klom. I host a Comedy on Vinyl podcast. I just shifted in my seat. That was exciting. I'm doing a comedy album a day for all of 2017. You're going to see this preview here on Instagram, unless you're on youtube.com/comedyonvinyl where you see the full thing. So I had my best friend Dan Gomiller, who's also my co-host of the Dan and Jay's Comedy Hour podcast. Also, we've been doing sketch comedy together now for 24 years, since we were very little, but it counts. And I said, well, what do you want me to pick? And he said, give me a letter. So I gave him a letter. 3 options were Firesign Theater, Red Fox, and something else. He said, why not Red Fox? And I actually realized I'm glad he picked that, because that's what I wanted to listen to. Well, I didn't expect that when I grabbed Laff at the Party Volume 2, that inside would be Laff at the Party Volume 1. But that's what it is. From a totally different record label. It's not a different, it's from, it's a subsidiary of Dutone or Duto Records. Ducey Williams was the guy who was a record producer, saw Red Fox in nightclubs in the 50s. It was probably, who knows, it could have been a week before these got recorded. I don't know the whole history of when these were recorded, but 1956. And yeah, this is his first album. And it's great. Well, here's the thing. Your expectation when you hear Red Fox, if you know anything about his stand-up, or know how his stand-up is perceived, the assumption is it's going to be super dirty. And it's, at least by today's standards, I wouldn't call it dirty. It is bordering on cute. It is, he's very charming. Like, that's the thing. Like, you also associate him with Sanford and Son. Like, kind of latter-day Red Fox. Like, early Red Fox, first of all, doesn't sound a thing like that. He's just a young man who hasn't, gone through years of smoke and possibly drink to get that amazing voice that he had. But you're also getting this guy who is just there to make the audience laugh. And that, it sounds like I'm kind of backing up on this thing that I normally talk about on my podcast where, it's fine. Obviously, your goal, number one, is to make somebody laugh if you're a stand-up, if you're any kind of a comedian, but then you have to be responsible for your material. And I do agree that we talk about it a lot. But the funny thing is, there would be, I think, zero to apologize for, except for to a censor on this album, and barely to a censor. Actually, most of it is like very silly wordplay. It's very childish, and I don't mean that as an insult. It's like very like, that's why these were party albums. Like, it's getting you in this like little kid spot where he just said a dirty word. He knows he said a dirty word. We all made an agreement that this means this one particular thing. And it's really funny. I mean, like, for instance, he's talking about a race, a horse race, and one of the names is Pussy Willow. One of the names is My Dick. It's just like, I'm laughing thinking about it because it's so ridiculously silly. So the fascinating thing about this, the guy, again, Ducey Williams, who produced this, recorded his big hit. One of his first big hits was Earth Angel. And what's interesting to me is that to be a guy who knows how to do stuff in a studio and then to go to recording in a club, when you listen to this album, it's clearly several different nights. Clearly, or at least seems to be several different locations. To the point where at the beginning of side 2, there's a whole bit where Red Fox is, it sounds like there are 3 people in the room with him. And there might be. And they are eating it up. And it's delightful. Like, it's to the point where, like, I'm listening to it, I'm like, at no point, there are no groaners on it, but they're very simple, very silly, and, like, you might be tempted, I guess, not to laugh, but once you're in the right state of mind, you see how party albums worked, why they worked, and the kind of, when people talk about, like I said, a stand-up's goal, number one, being to make people laugh, like, that is all this is, and he's just testing waters and just going for it. And obviously he's been doing this for a long time because his timing and everything are magnificent. He's also got this weird delivery thing, which I didn't know he had, and I don't think I've heard too many people do. He does what I do when I speak, but he does this when he's performing, is he doesn't get to the point right away, or he'll, like, skip his own words. And it's so conversational sounding that it is more conversational than almost any comedian I've ever heard. It's to the point where it's like, and he does it... But then he does, and he'll skip thoughts the same way most people do, or at least the way I do as a nervous person. And I really love the way he tells stories. And I really appreciate his really dumb wordplay. It's ridiculous. I'm okay with really silly, dirty jokes that there's no There's no point there's no reason to not make them dirty too, though. I don't know. I really like it. It's just so much fun to listen to, and I'm very happy that it wasn't Volume 2. I got to hear the first thing that was released under his name. And we have a record producer from LA to thank for so many. If you go into Discogs.com, just search Red Fox, double D, double X, or double cross, as he says on here, and you'll see among albums, LPs, and singles, etc., 127 listings. They're actually very incomplete, and they're not in order, and I need somebody to please straighten it out. It's really driving me crazy. But he didn't do 127 albums, but he did a bunch of these, and they're very easy to get cheap. Probably even the first one. I need to figure out what different label released his first one, and how many different labels under Dutone and Duto released these. I don't know. But I am fascinated with it, and I desperately want to hear more now. Especially knowing that while he could be filthy, and I know he could be exceptionally filthy in later years, I really like this very simple, gleeful, childlike humor that is also dirty. Anyway, that is Red Fox, Laugh of the Party, Volume 1. I actually don't know the color of it. The first Red Fox albums, all the Laugh of the Parties, were this art, which he drew, by the way, says right there. Covered by Foxx. They're all just different colors, different colorations of this particular art. And I don't know which one the first one is, so we'll pretend this is it, but it's not. Thank you guys for listening. Or watching, actually. Thank you guys for watching. Check out the Comedy on Vinyl podcast, please. We've talked about most of these albums on the show. We're going to be talking about more. Got a good episode coming up this week, and I'm going to do this for all of 2017. That's about it. You can also check out the Dan and Jay's Comedy Hour podcast, danandjay.com. Dan Gomiller is my best friend of several years. At this point, I've lost count. I don't really care. And we do a podcast together. That's it. Thank you guys again for watching. And as always, have a good thing.